Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Can I ask you please to take the floor? Dear colleagues, good afternoon. I think it would be no exaggeration to say that these have been among the longest days of my career. I must choose my words carefully, in a manner that does not jeopardize ongoing investigations or in any way undermine the presumption of innocence. And I will. So if my fury, my anger, my sorrow do not come across, please be assured that they are very much present, along with my determination for this House to grow stronger. Make no mistake, the European Parliament, dear colleagues, is under attack. European democracy is under attack, and our way of open, free, democratic societies are under attack. The enemies of democracy, for whom the very existence of this Parliament is a threat, will stop at nothing. These malign actors linked to autocratic third countries have allegedly weaponized NGOs, unions, individuals, assistants and members of the European Parliament in an effort to subdue our processes. Their malicious plans failed. Our services, of whom I am incredibly proud, have been working with relevant national law enforcement and judicial authorities to break up this alleged criminal network for some time. We have acted in sync with authorities to ensure that all legal steps are respected, that all information is preserved, and that where needed, IT equipment is secured, offices are sealed, and house searches are able to be carried out. I accompanied a Belgian judge and police as required by the Belgian Constitution to a house search last weekend. As a precautionary measure, again with full respect for the presumption of innocence, I have stripped the Vice President mentioned of any tasks and responsibilities related to their role as Vice President, and I have convened an extraordinary meeting of the Conference of Presidents to launch an Article 21 procedure to bring their term as Vice President to an end in an effort to protect the integrity of this House. I was also scheduled today to announce the opening of the negotiating mandate for the visa waiver report with Qatar and Kuwait. In light of the investigations, this report must be sent back to committee. I also know that we are not at the end of the road, and we will continue to assist in investigations together with other EU institutions for as long as it takes. Corruption cannot pay, and we have played our part in ensuring these plans could not materialise. And I must be clear, the allegations are not about left or right or north or south. This is about right and wrong. And I would appeal to you to resist the temptation to exploit this moment for political gain. Do not cheapen the threat that we are facing. Now, I am in politics, like so many of you here, to fight corruption, to stand up for the principles of Europe. This is a test of our values and of our systems. And colleagues, let me assure you that we will meet this test head-on. There will be no impunity, none. Those responsible will find this Parliament on the side of the law, and I am proud of our role and assistance in this investigation. There will be no sweeping under the carpet. We will launch an internal investigation to look at all the facts related to the Parliament and to look at how our systems can become yet more watertight. There will be no business as usual. We will launch a reform process to see who has access to our premises, how these organisations, NGOs and people are funded, what links with third countries they have. We will ask for more transparency on meetings with foreign actors and those linked to them. We will shake up this Parliament and these towns, and I need your help to do it. We will protect those who help us expose criminality, and I will work to look at our whistleblower systems to see how can they be made stronger. But I must also say that while we can always look to increase deterrence and transparency, there will always be some for whom a bag of cash is always worth the risk. And what is essential is that these people understand that they will get caught, that our services work, and that they will face the full extent of the law, as happened in this case. These are challenging times for us all, but I know and I am convinced that if we work together, we can come out of it stronger. To you, my colleagues who have lived these days with me, let me say again how deeply disappointed I am. I know you all share the same sentiment. And to those malign actors in third countries who think they can buy their way forward, who think Europe is for sale, who think they can take over our NGOs, let me say that you will find this Parliament firmly in your way. We are Europeans. We would rather be cold than bought. And now, dear colleagues, together with an agreement of the political groups, and before we officially start this plenary meeting, I will give the floor to the group leaders, starting with Manfred Weber.
Madam President, dear colleagues, we as EPP Group are shocked. The corruption charges against one of our highest representatives of this European Parliament has significantly damaged our institution and affected the trust of people in the European Union as a whole. The damage to European democracy is too big to be now used for party political battles. Let's be clear about this. We are, as EPP Group, extremely worried because we feel the credibility of the only directed elected institution in Europe is put in danger by the actions of the people concerned. It will take more than this debate to restore some of the trust that has been lost. As they say, trust comes on foot, but it leaves on a horse. On the one side, no rule can stop criminals, but on the other side, we as EPP Group, we are ready to improve our rules to make them better for the future. Everybody of us is sitting here with the feeling of responsibility, and to fight corruption is one of it. Corruption is the biggest enemy of democracy. It undermines the freedom of speech. It breaks the trust of people have in their institutions of state. To be crystal clear, there is not any room for corruption in that Parliament or in other institutions of the European Union. The laws must be applied strictly and the prosecution has to be followed consequently. And we express as EPP our gratitude to the Belgian police and the public prosecutor for their investigation and their actions. There is no any question that this House will cooperate fully with the rest of these investigations. I want to thank you, Madam President Roberta Metsola, for your clear and important cooperation at the beginning of this difficult development. Fight against corruption is key. That is the only way to regain the trust of the European people in the institution, in the European Parliament, in the heart of democracy in Europe.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. And now, on behalf of the S&D Group, Irache Garcia Perez.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, President. I'd like to...
Que este es un día negro, es un día muy triste para la democracia europea y es un día también muy triste y muy difícil para el Grupo Socialdemócrata, y por eso quiero anunciarles que acabamos de tomar la decisión de personarnos como parte perjudicada en el proceso judicial que se va a abrir en estos momentos.
Excuse me, Irache, there is no interpretation into English of your statement. Can we please? Excuse me. Okay, start again. I don't hear anything in my...
Can you hear the English booth?
Okay, now it's okay.
Ok, pues voy a empezar desde el...
Thank you. I'll start from the beginning. I wanted to start by saying that I'm sure that I can speak for the vast majority of this House by saying that this is a dark day for European democracy. It's a very sad day, and as you will understand, it's also a very difficult day for the Social and Democrat group, and for those reasons I wanted to say that we have just taken a decision. We will regard ourselves as a prejudiced party when it comes to the judicial process which is about to be opened, and that is because the criminal behaviour of some individuals is a stain on this institution and is a stain on the credibility of the European Union. There is a legal investigation ongoing, and those who are guilty will need to pay for that. But this House must also respond firmly to get to the bottom of what has happened and also to guarantee that this never happens again. For those reasons, I appeal to people to show responsibility and stand united. I've already spoken to the President and the leaders of the other political groups. I hope that we can work together to increase transparency and increase accountability. European citizens should know that they can count on us to clarify the facts and to work together with the judicial system, because the daily work that the vast majority of members in this House are doing is not something that should be overshadowed. We are talking about specific measures in different bodies of this Parliament, and it's also necessary that those discussions continue in other European institutions. We must act firmly to stamp out corruption. We must defend honesty in politics, and we must do this by working together, because it is by standing united that we can best fight corruption and those who want to undermine European democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Irache. On behalf of the Renew Europe Group, now Stéphane Séjourné.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Chers collègues.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, on behalf of my group, let me begin by thanking the Belgian police and legal system, the arm of our democracy. And I read the tweets from Mr. Orban, who's already trying to exploit this. I think of the people of Hungary who don't have an independent legal system which would carry out any kind of anti-corruption activities. I'm proud that I work in a country where such inquiries are possible. First of all, our institution needs, as you have done, Madam President, to express its total solidarity and cooperation with the legal authorities. That, of course, doesn't mean that we should just wait for the legal procedure to run its course. Far from it. My group will propose actions which will, I think, be something which will enjoy broad consensus in this House. We'll, as other groups, will vote for the withdrawal of the vice presidential position from Mrs. Kaili. We need to give a signal to that effect. And of course, if the accusations are proven true, we'll ask her to resign. When it comes to Qatar, Madam President, we call, as you've said, is going to happen for the issues that were voted on during the committee stage. And in the light of the ongoing inquiries, my group, of course, will support the referral back to committee of those particular items. When it comes finally to the transparency of political life, we, of course, support the idea of transparency registers. It's an idea that's long been mooted in this House, but now we definitely need specific rules on this. Since 2019, my group has been calling for an interinstitutional moral body dealing with not just MEPs, but former MEPs, as well as everyone else who works in the European institutions. On the question of interference, as you rightly said, Madam President, we are also in favour of addressing this once, of course, the legal procedure has run its course and light has been thrown on these events. Let me end by saying that my group will work with the institution. Renew Europe will always be there fighting for democracy and transparency, fighting against corruption. We can't allow our work to be besmirched, or this Parliament or Europe to be besmirched. Nobody would be able to do this kind of thing with impunity. The people of Europe don't deserve that, and we can assure our fellow citizens that the European people, the European Parliament, is going to stand firm.
Merci, Stéphane. Now I give the floor to Terry Reintke on behalf of the Green Group.
Thank you, Madam President. I can only echo what the colleagues have been saying. These are dark days for European democracy. And I can tell you personally, colleagues, that I have always been a very proud member of this Parliament. To me, it's the honor of my life to be elected to this Parliament. And in the last days, honestly, this pride has seriously been shaken. And I myself know that most of us here are working hard, that we are honest and sincere in representing the EU citizens. But now I'm actually thinking about the millions of EU citizens who are struggling right now, the people who are lying awake at night, who do not know how to pay their bills, who do not know how to get through the next month, and what they had to see over the past days. And I think this puts shame on all of us here in this Parliament. And we have to be absolutely clear. This Parliament, after what happened, cannot do business as usual. We cannot stop at just thoughts and prayers. We have to be absolutely clear. We have to act. And I want us to act, as the colleagues have said, unitedly, as pro-European Democrats. But we have to act, and we also have to put something in written to be clear about what we want, because we want a full inquiry into this matter. Everything has to come to the surface right now, because, as people have said, trust has been broken. We have to have a dedicated position in the EP Bureau that is working on these reforms, that is working on anti-corruption, and we need to have more far-reaching measures, like, for example, the reform of the lobby register, but also an ethics body that can make sure that we do everything in our power to present something like this in the future. Indeed, colleagues, trust of citizens has been broken, and to my understanding, rightfully so. So let us do everything we can to bring everything to light and to prevent something like this from happening again in the future. This is about more than just us. This is about protecting this House. This is about protecting democracy. This is about protecting the European project. So let us do all we can. We owe it to ourselves, and we owe it to our citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. Next is Marco Zanni on behalf of the ID Group. Prego.
Grazie, Presidente. Grazie per...
Thank you, President. Thank you for your words at this difficult time. What is going on over these days, I think, is so far from the culture that should cloak this institution that it becomes very difficult even to find the words to comment on it. We are all deeply shocked by what is happening in these recent hours, with serious accusations against high-ranking members of this Assembly, or past members, and various associated staff. For our group, it's clear and essential that this group must take up a strong, resolute position on this, because too often the attitude we've seen in the past, in months gone by, is one that hasn't helped this institution. with colleagues who have spoken out against foreign interference, just as a report on foreign interference is being released by the Parliament with often unsubstantiated comments. Sometimes people don't remove the beam from their own eye when commenting on the speck of dust in others. I think there's a degree of hypocrisy on some sensitive issues here. It's clear that all may make mistakes, may commit errors, but what has happened, frankly unsustainable in this parliamentary term and must change, is, I believe, the attitude of moral superiority that some take on. And this huge scandal that we're experiencing is just the umpteenth proof for that. Now, above and beyond the immediate action that we must put in place to uphold the respectability of this institution, I believe we must do some deeper-rooted work. And this Parliament must fully investigate whether there is any political responsibility behind these facts, and that we must build a new attitude. Too often, there's a lot of self-referentialism that has harmed the EU institutions and this institution. Thank you.
On behalf of the ECR group, I give the floor to Richard Legutko.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, there is not much to be said. A lot of facts have already come out, and I'm sure more will come out in the future. Perhaps some of them quite surprising in a most unpleasant sort of way. But you were right, of course, Madam President, that European Parliament was targeted by the bad guys, and probably they consider the Parliament to be a place with several weak spots, and indeed they succeeded to a degree that shocked a lot of us. So I always wonder and ask myself, to what extent is it a problem of personal weaknesses of our colleagues, former colleagues or staffers, and to what extent is it a problem of a system, of a structure and rules and procedures? Probably both elements should be taken into account, and I wish there could be some kind of critical, objective analysis of this phenomenon. After all, this is a huge institution, very complex and not easy to manage. But such a critical analysis should be conducted by somebody from outside, not from our midst, for obvious reasons, that we are more interested in sustaining this institution and defending it, no matter what we say openly. So I would suggest that we should have a sort of critical description of the way such an institution functions. Perhaps that would give us an insight into what was wrong and how to prevent similar developments from happening in the future. And one last point, one thing that will certainly not improve the reputation of European Parliament: pompous, highfalutin rhetoric. I mean, this will not help. I mean, I have an impression that we very much like to indulge in sort of lofty language that didn't help in the future, hasn't helped and won't help. Just do something real. We want the real thing, not rhetoric. Rhetoric is a very easy thing.
Thank you very much. Richard, I give the floor now to Manon Aubry on behalf of the Left Group.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Thank you, President. Colleagues, I think we can say very clearly that the European Parliament has been caught up in the worst corruption scandal of its history. Qatar has bought the votes of this Assembly in order to cover up the exploitation of migrant workers who will work to death on the World Cup infrastructure. The facts are shocking. Over €1 million has been seized from the homes of suspects, the Vice President of the Parliament behind bars. The integrity of our institutions is at stake. But here, I really want to send a very clear message to Qatar. You cannot buy members like you can buy football clubs. Of course, it's shocking, but colleagues, I'm not really surprised, given how clear the interference of Qatar was. For over a year, our group has been calling for a debate and resolution to be held on human rights violations surrounding the World Cup in Qatar, and some groups were systematically opposed to that. When we finally did get it, when it came to the negotiations, I noticed that some groups were taking advantage of the fact that there were negotiations behind closed doors to try to play down criticism of Qatar. And they were trying to defend the interests of Qatar to the point that they were adding things that had nothing to do with the resolution in question. So, of course, the investigation currently concerns a political group, the Socialist Group, but money has no odour, and you find corruption in all sorts of places. And we know that the former President Nicolas Sarkozy is subject to an investigation regarding Qatar. And then there has also been constant praise from Commissioner Margarita Schinas, which might also raise questions as regards Qatar. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. And of course, the President of the Vice President should step down. But what world are we living in where we have to call for that and she doesn't simply step down herself? And secondly, I think, colleagues, that we need to have a committee of inquiry set up in the Parliament in order to look at how vulnerable European institutions are to corruption and conflicts of interest. And finally, if we're to deal with this kind of problem effectively in the future, then we do need to ensure that we pick up on things such as an independent ethics body, an issue which was not taken up before, so that we can have that in place. Our reaction, our condemnation should be unanimous. We should speak out loud here in the European Parliament to make it clear that democracy is not up for sale. Thank you.
Ms. O'Brien, this concludes this round. So we go back to our agenda. The minutes and the text adopted of the sitting of the 24th of November are available. If there are no comments, the minutes are approved. I have a few announcements to come. So the LIBE Committee has adopted 2 mandates to enter into interinstitutional negotiations pursuant to Rule 71, Paragraph 1 of the Rules of Procedure on third countries whose nationals are subject to or exempt from a visa requirement, Kuwait and Qatar, and the European Union Drugs Agency. For the first file on third countries whose nationals are subject to or exempt from a visa requirement, as I said earlier, on Kuwait and Qatar, I have decided with the agreement of the political groups to propose a referral back to committee of this file pursuant to Rule 198. I understand that the rapporteur would like to take the floor, and I give the floor to Eric Marquardt.
Ja, vielen Dank, Frau Präsidentin. Ich habe in den letzten Tagen
Thank you, President. In the last days, not just those who've been involved in this, but colleagues with different groups I've spoken to, and there seems to be a rare sense of community. We're all shocked about what has been aired and have the view that corruption is an attack on democracy and must carry severe consequences for those who have been corrupted and serious consequences for those who are bought, and also the EU institutions need to do everything in their power to prevent the recurrence of such events. And in that sort of situation, we can't allow a state potentially attacking our democracy to receive visa freedom. So first of all, we must ensure that there's been no influencing of that process and ensure that we're drawing the right lessons. And we must ensure that we don't get into negotiations on visa liberalisation. So we appeal to Rule 198 for a referral back to the committee. Thank you.
What I put this proposal to a vote. Who is in favour? Who is against? Who abstains? Okay, that is adopted. Then the motion is carried and the file is referred back. Regarding the other LIBE mandate on the European Union Drugs Agency, pursuant to Rule 71, paragraph 2, members or political groups reaching at least the medium threshold may request in writing by tomorrow, Tuesday 13th December at midnight, that the decision to enter into negotiations be put to the vote. If no request for a vote is made, the committee may start the negotiations. The reports which constitute the mandate for the negotiation is available on the plenary webpage, and its title will be published in the minutes of the sitting. The S&D group has communicated to me that Ms. Eva Kaili is no longer a member of the group as of 9th of December 2022, and she sits with the non-attached members. Mr. Pascal Durand is no longer a member of the Renew Europe group and has joined the S&D group as of the 30th of November 2022. The competent authorities of Italy have notified me of the election of Ms. Beatrice Covassi to the European Parliament, replacing Ms. Simona Bonafè with effect from the 6th of December 2022. I wish to welcome our new colleague and recall that she takes her seat in Parliament and its bodies in full enjoyment of her rights, pending the verification of her credentials. In accordance with Article 7 of the Code of Conduct for Members of the European Parliament with respect to financial interests and conflicts of interest, I decided to appoint Mr. Gilles Boyer as member of the Advisory Committee on the Conduct of Members, replacing Mr. Pascal Durand with effect from 7 December 2022. The S&D, Renew Europe, Greens, ID and ECR groups and the non-attached members have notified me of decisions relating to changes to appointments within committees and delegations. These decisions will be set out in the minutes of today's sitting and take effect on the date of this announcement. I have received from Council its position at first reading, as well as the reasons which led to its adoption and the positions and opinions of the Commission. The full title will be listed in the minutes of the sitting. The 3-month period available to Parliament to adopt its positions will therefore begin as from tomorrow, 13th of December. I'd also like to inform you that since the adjournment of Parliament session on the 24th of November, I have signed, together with the President of the Council, one act adopted under the ordinary legislative procedure in accordance with Rule 79 of the Parliament's rules. I would also like to inform you that on Wednesday I shall sign, together with the President of the Council, 11 acts adopted under the ordinary legislative procedure. The titles of the acts will be published in the minutes of this sitting. I would also like to inform you that I have received a request for urgent procedure from the Council pursuant to Rule 163 on macro-financial assistance plus instrument providing support to Ukraine for 2023. The vote on this request will be taken tomorrow, and if adopted, the vote will be held on Thursday. Since this is a second reading procedure, should no proposal to reject the Council's position and no amendments be tabled, the proposed act will be announced as adopted pursuant to Rule 69. We now move to changes requested by political groups. Ms. Langen-Siepen, I know you have a point of order. Do you want to make it on this point, or can it be made after the announcements? Okay, I will give you the floor then. So, on the agenda, we have 5 groups that have asked for a debate on our introductory debate on the suspicions of corruption. What I would propose is that I ask the first group who submitted the request, which is the left group, to submit its request. So Ms. Aubry will present it. We will then see whether there is a majority for that request. After that, we will proceed to see whether there is a majority for a resolution. Manon, you have the floor. We'll take it from there first.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, President. This won't take long. We've just talked about the main points at issue, and it will be strange in the final session of the year, just after the scandal broke, if we weren't to hold a debate when each member here who's shocked and angry could express their views. We need to talk about this, which will allow us to draw certain conclusions as to how we should follow up on all of this for our various institutions, because things can't be allowed to continue as they are. But let me make it clear that we're calling for a debate and, as a separate vote, a resolution. We need to see the wood for the trees, Madam President. We need to draw conclusions that are political, and we're talking about an independent political body looking at people's behaviour, and this scandal goes beyond external countries and lobby groups. It's not a question of just banning them from the Parliament. It's not a supermarket after all.
The group has asked, to be clear, that a Commission statement on suspicions of corruption from Qatar and the broader need for transparency and accountability in the European institutions to be debated. Can I ask whether anybody wants to speak against Asita Kanko on behalf of the ECR group?
Of course, I don't want to speak against, but the ECR group has an idea. Oh, are you surprised? Don't be.
It's okay. Go ahead, Asita.
Yeah. So the ECR group would like to propose another title, namely the corruption allegation against members, staff and former members of the European Parliament. We support the initiative, but we think it's quite clear that there have been corruption, and we don't want to speak about suspicions. The title must be clear. We, the European Parliament, are not for sale. We are lawmakers, and also we request the vote to happen on, as a roll call vote, because we need to be transparent in this House and towards the citizens today on this.
Okay, so Ms. Kanko, thank you very much. We will vote first on the proposal of the left group, and if that has a majority, then the other motions fall. Yes, it will be recorded. I open the vote. I close the votes. And it is adopted, and therefore we will have a debate on Tuesday in the afternoon and we will now see the majorities for whether we should have a resolution. Who is in favour of having a resolution? Stéphane, you want to take the floor?
Oui, pour être très clair, Madame la
Yes, just to be clear on our position. I think this is a position which is shared, including among groups who may vote against the resolution for the time being. We're not hostile to the idea of a resolution. We do think that we need to learn lessons from this, but we need to take some time to look into the issue, perhaps come back to it in January and see whether we have a legal procedure which might have closed by that point, and then we might have some conclusions that we can draw from that. We're right in the midst of the legal case at the moment, and there are still people investigating Parliament premises. I don't know that this is perhaps the best way for the Parliament to deal with it, having a resolution straight away. So we're in favour of a resolution, but at a later stage, so we'll be voting against.
Mr. Weber? Manfred, please.
Frau Präsidentin, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen.
Madam President, colleagues. Colleagues were asked to come to the COP to take first measures and to react. It's important we have quick reactions from Parliament, and we want to ensure there's a broad pro-European, pro-democratic consensus on this matter. So clear decisions will be taken tomorrow morning already in the COP. The left is making a proposal. I think we'll have enough time for debates this week, so keeping those ideas in the back of my mind, I would support and emphasise Mr. Séjourné's proposal, so that when facts are produced by the investigating authorities, we can fall in behind it then.
To have a resolution this week for the vote. I open the vote. I close the vote. And it is adopted. Ms. Kanko, you wanted to take the floor? Go ahead.
Yes, I would like to request to vote again on the proposal about Qatar, because it was very confusing. We could vote, for example, first on the title and then on the decision. Otherwise, it will give the impression that some members who wanted another title are against the idea of having a debate and a resolution. Could we vote again on a more clear way, please, Madam President? Thank you.
Ms. Kanko, I cannot do that, but you can explain your vote and the procedure, and you can participate in the debate and on the resolution, now that the decision for have a resolution has been taken. Next point is on Monday, the Renew Group has asked. Oh, this is also the same. For Tuesday, the S&D, EPP and Renew groups have requested that Council and Commission statements on the recent JHA Council decision on Schengen accession be added as the second point in the afternoon after the question time to the Commission. As a consequence, the sitting would be extended until 11 p.m. I give the floor to Mr. Dan Nica to move the request. Wait, the microphone, please. 126. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much, President. The JHA Council last week saw Romania and Bulgaria wrongly and absolutely incorrectly left out of Schengen, and it overturned the decision by this Parliament on the accession of Romania and Bulgaria in March. We had a question time. We need to look at the JHA decision taken, and therefore we need to put it on the agenda for 2023.
I don't see that to be the case, so I put the request to a vote by roll call. I open the vote. I close the vote. And it is adopted, and therefore we will have Council and Commission statements on the recent JHA Council decision on Schengen accession to be added as the second point in the afternoon after the question time to the Commission, and as a consequence, this sitting will be extended until 11 p.m. Now, for Wednesday, the Renew Group has requested that the Council and Commission give statements on defending the European Union against the abuse of national vetoes to be added as a second point in the afternoon. As a consequence, the sitting would be extended until 11. I give the floor to Mr. Guy Verhofstadt to move the request on behalf of his group.
I think that it's obvious why an additional point on Wednesday afternoon would be added on defending the European Union against the abuse of national vetoes, because everybody can see today what is happening with national vetoes. On every file, more and more of these files are blocked today, the last days, the last weeks. Migration strategy, Schengen, electoral law, energy price cap on gas, taxation policy, the minimum rate on multinationals, further sanctions, and further also the financial aid to Ukraine, where we need to find now a solution with 26 instead of a solution inside the Union. So it's clear that, in my opinion, vetoes are an instrument for blackmailing the Union, and it is increasing for the moment. I know that we asked for that a convention to seriously discuss this, and again, due to the lack of consensus, the Council is not in a position to respond to that request. So I know that we have a discussion Wednesday with the European Council, but it's only 2 hours. What we're going to discuss is Ukraine, and we're going to discuss energy. So I request that we need an urgently debate before the Council on Thursday, and my proposal would be to add that item Wednesday afternoon as the second point of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Verhofstadt. I give the floor to any colleague who would like to speak against. I don't see that to be the case, so I put the request to a vote by roll call. Vote is open. Vote is closed. And it is adopted, and therefore we will have Council and Commission statements as the second point on Wednesday afternoon. For Wednesday as well, the EPP Group has asked that a Commission statement on the impact on rule of law of recent developments in Spain be added as the fifth point in the afternoon. As a consequence, the sitting is already extended until 11 p.m. I give the floor to Mr. Paulo Rangel to move the request on behalf of the EPP Group. Number 14, please.
Yeah.
No, not yet. Okay.
Now it is. Thank you. So, the EPP requests an additional debate on this issue of rule of law, strengthening the institutions and judicial independence. There are worrying developments in some EU countries, namely in Spain, towards less independence of the judiciary and more governmental intervention in it, in breach of the rule of law principles. The President of the government has recently announced his intention of taking unilateral measures on the judiciary that clearly go against everything that the European Union values and principles defend. The playing rules cannot be changed for political interests in order to place former members of government in the National Constitutional Court, and to change the criminal code cannot be handed over to convicted criminals to decide which crimes to suppress or downgrade, such as sedition and corruption. This is not a national debate. We see, we listen, we read. And if we read, we listen and we see, we cannot pretend that worrying developments are going on in Spain.
Okay.
We should not have a double pattern.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rangel. Would anyone want to speak against? No, so we put the request to the vote by roll call. I open the vote. I close the vote. And it is rejected, so the agenda is unchanged. On Thursday, the EPP Group has requested that the Commission statement on the 30th anniversary of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Persons Belonging to National or Ethnic, Religious and Linguistic Minorities be wound up by a resolution to be voted on Thursday. I give the floor to Mr. Laurent Vince to move the request on behalf of the EPP Group.
Thank you, Madam President. On Sunday, the 18th of December, we celebrate the World Minority Rights Day. This date also marks the 30-year anniversary since the adoption of the Declaration on the Rights of Persons Belonging to National or Ethnic, Religious and Linguistic Minorities. It is the only UN international human rights instrument devoted to minority rights, and it is built on the core idea that the rights of minorities are vital to advancing political and social stability and preventing conflicts. This September, at the anniversary high-level meeting organised in New York, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said that the world still falls far short in action supporting minorities. The Parliament should also echo his call. We welcome the debate planned for Thursday morning on the topic. On behalf of the EPP Group, I propose that, in a manner consistent with our action on previous UN declarations, we also adopt a resolution. Commitment to fundamental values and to a principled foreign policy stance would demand a strong voice of the Parliament on this matter, and I hope all the political groups would support this request. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vince. Does anybody want to speak against? No? Then I put the request to the vote. By roll call, I open the vote. I close the vote, and it is rejected. That concludes our agenda discussion, and I give the floor to Ms. Langensiepen to make her point.
Test. It's working.
Yes, it's
yeah,
working.
please, colleagues, could you wait and sit down for a moment? It's on human rights and not on corruption. Thanks for listening. On the 3rd of December, we celebrated the International Disability Day. On the 6th of December, few colleagues, me and EDF, organized an event on that. And the host of that event, Madame Nicole Sonova and her team applied for an accessible room for that event because it was about persons with disabilities. And persons with disabilities were invited. What we got was a room who was not accessible for our wheelchair-using guests. Even when I apply for my voting machine, it's always a fight to get it, and for 2 times, colleagues had to vote instead of me. That's against the law, by the way. And I apply now for a call the Commission. No, I don't call the Commission, I call for the Secretariat, that maybe in next year, and 24th, and maybe for the next generation, it's possible to have an accessible Parliament in Strasbourg and in Brussels. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Langen-Siepen. You are absolutely right, and we will do our best to make sure this doesn't happen again with different measures that we can take. I will speak to the relevant services. Thank you. We move to the first item.